you're back. I was waiting for you. There are matters that need your approval. You can go check them in the...
Hi guys, welcome to Lost Ark. It's your boy Kyrandis here, the isometric ARPG MMO that has existed in Korea for a few years before coming to NAEU, and I've been waiting for this for quite a while. I'm sort of like trying to keep my eyes off of it essentially to prevent hype and preemptive knowledge for this first impression video. This is a game that I believe like Diablo and like Path of Exile should have evolved into but never did, and now Lost Ark exists, so I don't care about them anymore. A lot of the game Lost Ark presents is what I believe what MMOs should strive to perform in terms of gameplay and excellence and mechanics, as well as the whole MMO experience. So that's like, this is my first impression. Obviously making a review about an MMO is actually incredibly enormous task, because to review a game you should know like practically all the ins and outs of it and a lot of details. So this is just a first impression, and even then it's still going to be pretty detailed and pretty long. Review will come later when the game launches and when I actually know more about the game on the ins and outs. So there will be a bit of details here where I have no idea what's going on certain aspects of the game, but this is just what I've come across just in the first 32 levels of the early game to sort of like the mid areas of the game. And pretty much the game is also an MMO and has most things MMORPGs should have. It's got community involved in activities, whether it be raiding or RPing at each other's house or just building things together essentially. Down the road, I've seen a lot of systems that seem to involve a lot of that, apart from just killing monsters and demons and big baddies for most of your initial gameplay, which is what you'll start off doing anyways. But there are things like the Stronghold that I'm in right now, which is essentially my housing, that allow you to sort of just go the polar opposite dynamic of the entire gameplay, which is just chill out and, I don't know, build your place up if you care about it at all. I don't know if this is really mandatory, but I'll get more into it later. So first off, I'm going to start off with graphics here. I find that the game is detailed enough for the purposes of this game. I don't really expect mega polygons or like crazy levels of detail, but for a game that's sort of presented in isometric style, it is actually quite detailed for a character up this close anyways. And from a distance you can still tell. Armor sets, there's quite a number of them that change throughout my gameplay so far. And it's kind of good to know that these pieces are all separate and it's not like just laziness of a chest piece and a headgear. It's actually like arm, shoulder, pants, and a chest piece and a headgear and your weapon. So any MMO that I've already said staple in the past that if they got pants, it's probably good, because a lot of MMOs don't seem to have a pants slot shown. It's just usually melded and fused with the body for some reason. I don't know why. Customization in this game is ranged enough where you won't look like clones of each other. The sliders and whatnot are good enough to excel what you want to do. These previews of the class are actually pretty cool, just showing you what your class may be capable of. It looks pretty cool, honestly. Like even the gunner looks really sick. Oh man, I'm just being taken away here. Anyways. So when you go over customization, there's like preset made looks for you as well. You've got like face shapes that you can just edit around and tweak if you want. It's got settings of easy sliders. It doesn't really get more advanced than this, but I believe this is already enough variation for what the game presents to you anyways. You won't really look like an identical clone of somebody else very much compared to a previous game I went over. So this should be at least like the basic standard minimum these days, as I've seen mobile games that have much greater extensive customization than some PC games. But for Lost Ark, this is acceptable, where I'm not gonna go like crazy hardcore like critic about it, because the game is free to play, and also like it still has sliders, and it's sliders in the important areas that you would probably care about anyways for the most part. And it keeps your character sort of its identity of what it looks like, rather than becoming big chonky, and then like, you know, a paladin is also big chonky, but then you've got a gunner. I know some people want to be big chonky gunner and maybe skinny slim paladin, but overall like the silhouette of your character sort of matches its class essentially, so it's easy to sort of identify one player to the other of what class they are. So you do get like some form of freedom to a degree, but it's not like completely just set palettes of just like set boxes like this and that's all you get. So you can tweak these looks quite a little bit and make your character at least unique to some form. It is the basic standard minimum. This is what I expect for most MMOs or any game these days, where you have character creation, to have this kind of system. And like I said, when I played mobile games that have greater extensive customization than this, there's no reason that a PC title should have less standards than a mobile game. If you hold your standards less than that, then there's really no argument to be made. So far, the gameplay is actually quite impactful. I really enjoy it a lot. Most of the classes look really fun. I've only played 2 classes, which is the Infighter and the Deathblade, but just watching other people's play like the other classes as well was very exciting. Obviously, I don't have enough time to just invest my time into all sorts of different classes, but I'll eventually jump into more of them later when launch comes, because the game is actually very alt-friendly. By impactful, I mean by the sound design and audio of this game for like combat has a really good feel to it. Like, it's very impactful. My skills actually feel like the strength that they're performing. And like, just the stuff you're blowing up at, you see like just monsters and stuff exploding all over the place is quite nice. So that's a little bit of combat there. And yeah, like, skill animations, audio design for the skills is very like impactful. I like it a lot. It makes me want to play more. It makes the skill feel really strong, and I want to use the skill more often and can't wait until it's off cooldown. The dodges are actually very fluid. The controls are very responsive. I don't feel like there's some form of weird desync or like I feel like if you lag, it's gonna suck for you, not so much the game itself. The game is gonna punish you for lagging kind of thing, so it's good to have a good ping, I guess. Possibly, I don't really know yet, because I haven't really done too much of those high-end raids or high-end battles since I'm only around like level 32 on my main character, which is the Deathblade. So Deathblade is the other class I'm playing here, and it's like a speed assassin class. Pretty much what I really enjoyed most of the time in most games. And yeah, so like combat is really impactful, and like I can't wait until the later stages of the game. I've been patiently waiting for this game for 2 years essentially, but I fell off the observation pillar for a year or so when I heard it was taking a downfall in the popularity in Korea due to bad design decisions and monetization. But then it sort of redeemed itself in the second year. So in the second year, they sort of like moved away from bad decisions and monetization practices, and then it grew in crazy popularity and became like one of the top popular and playing games in Korea. So in Korea, most of the KR games are like, their popularity and amount of time played usually is tied to the success of the game. But like, and by success I mean like the player sentiment, the staying power, and the excitement people have. Total or game launch financial success doesn't really mean much to me at all. It just means that marketing was one hell of a drug and like a lot of people bought into it. So that's all it means for me in terms of financial success. So like in terms of success, it is all about the time down the road if players stayed and continued growing the game in excitement and kept playing it for long periods, or whether or not they all fell off and no one cares about the game after a short period. It's really dependent on those two conditions. If it's a long period of time and then people stayed and the game grew as well, then it's a big success in my opinion. If people just bought into it and they had like, oh, like 12 million sales, but like nobody cares about it after like a few months or a year, it's not really a success because no one's talking about it anymore. Your game was just a cash grab. That's essentially what it is. So like, I've waited 2 years for this and people keep hyping it up, keep anticipating it. I finally played the alpha like a few months back for only 2 days. Didn't really dive into it, but this beta is much longer, so I dived into it quite a bit more. And yeah, it's lived up to the hype. I'm so glad I waited the 2 years and didn't really spoil myself by playing the other regions. So this first impression is as clean as it gets for me and for you guys. So like overall, I feel like the game has a lot to deliver and it's got a lot going on. And most of the time, like, you know, some huge popular games devolve into flaming hot messes, and then other games, smaller games, evolve into hot gems that you never discover. I feel like this game could be one of them, but overall it seems to be gaining a huge amount of traction due to today's like climate with streamers, content creators, and whatnot. So I think this game will be a huge hit, and there's going to be all these weird arguments about pay to win and all these other like nonsense things, but overall I think this game is solid. It's good. I'm invested in it. I bought a founders pack. I'm not sponsored by anybody, unfortunately, and yeah, this is my first impressions of it. So things I knew about Lost Ark before going into it were that the game is alt-friendly. the later battles are exciting and non-linear. I've noticed that a lot of the early and mid-game, even though my battles are like kind of easy early on, I've noticed that like even the battles were non-linear. By about like level 30, I've already participated in a plotline siege war kind of thing.
I sense a dark
Lead YouTube? I don't work at Google, unfortunately.
Please hurry. The battering rams are leaving soon.
Oh yes. We're off to war, baby. See, why did... Oh shit. See, I never understood why we couldn't have something like this in BDO. Okay, like this is what I expect of a fucking war. Is our tower even gonna make it? Oh god. Fuck, I'm like, that's more than a graphics card. So I don't really know how I feel about that. Selling point is more silence than noise, even though Noctua is better. I don't care about better. I'm not like a min-max sweaty user is why.
Who would be so bold?
But one of the job just finished, so I'm kind of free and I only have my part-time job now. But I booked this entire week off to play Lost Ark because I really wanted to play this beta, and this so far I do not regret booking the week off because this is pretty fun. There was like a giant demon boss that was climbing up that was part of the initial Lost Ark trailer, and I was really hyped during that stream, living a moment that hyped me up beginning when I first saw this game's trailer. I was like, holy shit, I'm like, this is the part in the trailer that I saw many years ago, and now I'm finally running through it in this beta. I'm like, it feels great. Jesus. Alright, this is definitely the trailer now. I remember this. The lighting and everything. The lighting and the setting. This is what it is. This is what I'm playing Lost Ark for. Oh my god, okay, that actually hit me, wow. To lower the iron bars. Let's lower the iron bar. And then the game also has like a number of meaningful grinds. And what do I mean by like meaningful grinds? Meaningful grinds are stuff that gives you like permanent gains, so it doesn't disintegrate over time with like patch updates or like future updates, or like gear becoming irrelevant because the game has moved forward to a new area and a new tier kind of thing. Meaningful grinds are like permanent stats or like aesthetics, for instance, if you're chasing costumes fighting in the game for it, or like growing like a town or whatnot. All of these things I kind of, anything that is related to permanence is mostly a meaningful grind to me. So you got things like the adventure tome and like collectibles and things like that to do, as well as titles and leveling up NPCs and getting their trust. You can also hire them over to your island and have the NPCs at your island as well, which is pretty cool. I don't know why like a lot of MMOs don't do these like simple things. It really makes the experience very, very different and seems to have a lot more care involved with the development of the game. Alright, so I'm just going to go through these menu areas here. The first one here is the memory chamber, just to reach back on the cutscenes. So memory chamber is just a menu like offshore place that you can port off to just to view cutscenes again that you've encountered in the story. It's actually quite nice. Most people might not care, or some people do. I actually think this is a concerted effort into like describing the plot of the line, considering this title has had no like sequel or anything, or not that I know of anyways, or history. So getting into a completely brand new game with no story that I care about or anything, or if the game even presents it in a digestible way, this is actually really nice touch. It's a nice review to the plot, and while I think the cutscenes and voice acting in this game are decent or mediocre at best, this is more than I expected of most MMOs that are free to play actually, and I think more MMOs should follow suit. Because like I played a lot of MMOs in the past that are just completely forgettable, or they have a story plot that nobody gives a shit about, and the game delivers the plot in one-liners that are very easy to digest. So the voice acting may be corny and cringy at certain points, but nonetheless sometimes it even works in its favor in making the scenario completely ridiculous and exciting. And even later then, the beasts and monsters and demons and whatnot, their voice acting is actually kind of decent, or got better. Some of the NPCs and voice actors, it's kind of like questionable. It's like, damn, what the hell? But it's fine either way. Like, this was actually more than I expected. This was actually more than I expected. So this is actually like pretty good. It doesn't feel uninspired, and the voice actors don't feel like they're gasping for life. So this is good. I'm actually invested in the plot line as much as I don't know about anything in this world in Lost Ark. This would already drive me to invest like thoughts into exploring plot holes or loopholes in the story, which I did on stream. One of the minor spoiler here was like one of the bosses got absorbed by another NPC, and then I was just wondering how his band of like freaks or whatever could not detect that one of their brethren literally got absorbed by that dude over there, if they're all powerful kind of thing. But that's just like reaching beyond game logic essentially. But even then it was like still fine to digest, and it wasn't too critical. Like, I'm not expecting this to be like a single player game story. This is an MMORPG game story, which most MMOs don't give a shit about that story at all. And yeah, this one was actually like enough to keep me interested. Nevertheless, this is a good little memory room that you can have. It also tells me that the developers care about their story and presenting it to you in a digestible fashion and not trying to bore your eyes out. Obviously, this is my experience with it in terms of like what the game is trying to get me to be interested in, and this is a good sign. Most games there's not really a review station if you've played a number of MMOs or a lot of MMOs like I have in the past. Most of these things don't exist in a lot of older MMOs, especially for free-to-play games. I gauge free-to-plays, pay-to-plays, and buy-to-plays very, very differently between all three sets of monetization practices across MMOs. Alright, so we're going to go about achievements now. Achievements is pretty much the bane of my existence. Trying to be a 100% completion lord and having all these bars filled up all the time. It's in Lost Ark, it serves more than just a flex of completion. It also enhances your entire account over time, as completing objectives grants you like mission EXP and expedition EXP. It might be slightly confused here, but like it adds to your account level, which in turn gives you all characters stats, permanent statuses. So it makes you progressively stronger step by step, even if it's like a small little edge. But like if you do it over time and you have a bunch of small little steps added up together, you could eventually get a significant edge in the battles that await you in like the later runs for your Lost Ark adventure. So like this is like to me another form of meaningful grind, and like just browsing through the achievements here as to what to do, there is a lot of stuff going on in this game for all the classes, so it does expect you to probably give a shot at the other classes as well. And same with like skills, battle, raid, sailing that I haven't even unlocked. Stronghold and others, who knows, and Hidden cannot achieve. I don't really know, but yeah, this is a lot going on here just in itself for the achievements. Normally it wouldn't be really game breaking or enormously game changing if you only looked at each account level up status up by 1, but this is a lot of stuff here. And like even then, like at level 18 I've got 55 dexterity and 45 vitality, and like if I look at a piece of gear, that's almost like an extra piece of gear for me right now, because this earring itself is only 51 dex and 89 vitality. It's not that far off. So this is what I mean by like step-by-step progress like this is very good to me. It's meaningful content and stuff that doesn't disintegrate with like patch updates or whatever. It's something that carries on with you as the game develops, and you don't have to go like, oh, I gotta start from 0 again and regrind this all back up again. And it's account wide, so you can do it with like all your characters, and all of them will progressively get slightly stronger from these things. So like the amount of categories and things listed in the achievements here, this is a good sign. It indicates a lot of activities that the MMO can present to you. While you may not see it early on, just visiting through some of these menus can give you an idea of what's in store. And for MMOs, it's always welcome to have more activities than less. MMOs are huge games, and creating reviews of them is very, very difficult. As I said earlier, most of the time it's highly difficult to create a review of a game in about 2 hours for an MMO. Usually if you can create a review in an MMO in 2 hours of gameplay, I'd have to say that game probably has very little to offer you at all. A lot of MMOs, as you ask people who don't play MMOs, their usual sentiment towards MMOs, they don't play it, is because it takes too much time. That's because the games are usually enormous. They are giant time sinks. So I would expect that even playing 10 hours or 50 hours of a gameplay is not enough to make a review of an MMO. It's like reviewing like 1/10 of a movie. How would you know if the movie's good if you only saw the first 10 minutes? It's ridiculous. So like, that's what I mean. If you can generate a review of an MMO in about 2 hours, I'd have to say like there's probably either not much going on about it, or you didn't really dive into the sauce at all. And this is why like this is a first impression. It's just more aligned to that of a first impression, since it's just a shallow breadth of what I feel the game has in store and what it's shown me so far. So another part of this is titles. Titles is another thing that's a nice addition to Lost Ark as well. They define objectives for you to get. You can also mix some of the titles up for a weird champ title for yourself, but the stats you gain are virtues, which in turn is pretty much a different stat. It's for NPCs and like opening up dialogue options and quests that may be hidden because you don't have a certain set stat requirement. You can raise virtues not just this way but other ways as well, but titles is another way of doing it. Usually when you click on these titles, it tells you how to get these titles as well, and what it grants in terms of a bonus right here on this little blurb. It was a little bit confusing at first, and I didn't know what they did or what was hard. It was hard to find information on what like virtue points did until like I encountered some NPCs and their dialogue boxes or certain quests was locked behind a stat requirement with virtue. So virtue is not really a combat statistic, it's more like a NPC exploration thing. So it gave a lot of weighting to NPCs. I thought this was really nice because a lot of times most people don't give a shit about the NPCs in an MMO. They're just some kind of weird like bot chat over there that has infinite gold where you can sell them all your garbage and then they'll pay you for it for some reason. So but like in this game, there's stats that are involved with this that'll help you converse with NPCs more often. So for instance here, it's like wisdom, courage, charisma, and kindness. I have these up based on my completion with titles and adventure tomes, as well as completing side quests and report quests, which is building amity with the NPCs and helping them with objectives, greeting them, leveling them up essentially. All of this translates to, again, more progressional gains for your entire for your characters. And it basically can add up to those small steps of progressional gains again. So if you need more power, you can get it this way as well. It doesn't have to always just be killing monsters. Sometimes it could just be solving your NPC problems or getting them food or something that they want, or becoming friends with them, which gives you power. So the next part here is engraving effect. I haven't really experienced what this is, so that's another system for a later date. I'll probably discover it later on down the road. This looks like it's probably something to do with higher end gameplay. the card catalog. This is a weird bonus stat system. And what I want to say here is that, like, when I opened this and saw this for the first time, the only thing that it reminded me of is Ragnarok. So for people who have played Ragnarok, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those who don't, I'm sorry. This is more like a thing of the past. Card system is kind of interesting. I actually like this a lot. This is pretty cool. Obviously, some of the tool tips are non-explanatory. Like, I don't know what this plus 8% is. This could just be a shitty tooltip for the time being. So it is a beta, but I'm sure they'll explain this later. Most of the mechanics in Lost Ark are actually really transparent. I have no idea how to get card EXP, and it isn't explained at all anywhere in the game. And I tried to look at this guide, but it's a Korean video. Yeah, it's a Korean video, and even then it only explains the basics of what is already naturally intuitive in installing these cards and setting a card set effect. But how to get the EXP, I don't know. Maybe I'll discover it later, but I'm not too concerned about it right now. It does look like a very, very important stat system for later on, and some of the effects is like, it looks really powerful for set effects. So you can see these, and you got like crit rate plus 7%, for instance. That's enormous for a card. It's not even in your gear window or whatnot. So, but like, this also brings a little bit of concern to like horrendous hell days of grinding in Ragnarok Online for MVP cards, and this could look like it could be equally as rough since these cards can be enhanced up to a level of 5 or something like that. And then there's like set bonuses, and my god, it looks like it would be a long journey for this one here. So I'm not really sure, but overall this does look like a pretty important system that I'll probably have to discover more later on in there. Another interesting thing for your character, essentially. So we've also got mission information. So this is what I showed earlier about your account level, essentially. So as you get this higher and higher, you get more and more stats. And you can see like the category list of what you get. Sometimes you get items, greater vitality, increased potion. Is this permanent? Yeah, it's like obtain 25 vitality. That's so much. That's a lot of bonuses. And then you got like wallpaper here, which is like aesthetics for your login screen. I don't even know what this Bifrost key is. That's for unlocking of the Bifrost slot. So you got to unlock something called Bifrost, I guess. I saw that in the menu somewhere later on, but I haven't unlocked it, and that looks equally as very, very important. Max work energy, like limit increases, these are huge in my opinion. Even if it seems small, anything that's like a limit increase is always massive, especially when you unlock it through like a difficult leveling part of the system, which is your account level. I would assume account level is probably the hardest thing to level up. Character levels seem pretty quick, but account level, it's quite hard because you got to do literally everything in the game to raise it. But it's not mandatory. You can still raise it through raising alts as well. There's multiple methods to raise it, and I'm pretty sure people aren't just completely under-leveled in their account level in KR, and they probably ignored particular activities as well. So onto the character tab, we've got this Book of Coordination. This is really strange. It unlocked for me recently, but I didn't do anything about it, and there's like stat allocation here, which is really weird to me. And I don't know what any of these stats are for, and it's for Proving Grounds. I believe Proving Grounds is actually like the first PvP area that opens up for you in 3-on-3 or like 1-on-1 duel arena or something like that. PvP in this game, I've heard, is actually quite balanced, and across like all regions and players' sentiments, everybody has said like the PvP is really balanced, so that's very appealing. I'm probably going to jump into it because there's skins and titles involved, and if it's balanced, I do enjoy PvP, especially when the systems aren't stupid or fundamentally broken. So it's gonna be a blast, because I used to PvP in Blade and Soul. I play PvP in Dota 2 all the time, and so yeah, it's something that I'm looking forward to as well. I don't know what these stat allocations are for, but this is pretty much like, it looks like it's also for like high-end raids. Item level 1445, so this could be some really high-end stuff, and you can like tune your skills and whatnot, add skill points. And awakening skills, this is where I got like a brief look at what the awakening skills are, so you can sort of like check out what high-end skills your character gets at about like level 50. These are your like ultimates essentially, or some sort. And I don't really know what this engravement tuning is, but it looks like there's a lot of things to learn here as well, which is nice. Like, I like the complexity of this and the different kinds of variations that all sorts of players can build all kinds of builds upon. So this is really, really interesting to me, and like, it's good. Thing about the PvP is that like there's a lot of classes and subclasses, and the fact that I've heard that PvP is pretty much balanced across the board is actually a really good sign, because I've heard in the past other people telling me like, oh, there's so many classes in this game, how could they possibly balance all of it, right? And I always tell these people, I'm like, maybe you should raise the expectation a little higher, because it is possible. You're just letting these game developers get away with lazy like balancing essentially, and having zero care and input into like what one ability does that affects another class, or completely like just makes all the other ones irrelevant. So like games like MOBAs, for instance, are a really good example always put out there. So League of Legends, maybe not, but like Dota 2, like they gotta balance over like 121 heroes all the time, and it's for like $30 million tournaments, and they all relatively work in all tandem combinations of like 5 versus 5. So it's always a permutation of 10 different heroes, and they gotta balance it across 121, and they managed to do so. So why can an MMO not do only like the 8 to 21 classes that they have? Is 1/5 of the amount, and the game revolves around other things, and it's very, very apparent that like you've got top end min-maxers that will always try and find the most efficient method or something, and then you've got the creative like weirdos like myself who will always try and break the system by doing random shit that seems ineffective but actually still works. And then if it doesn't work, then that means your game turned into a meta cookie cutter, and only these particular sect of classes only exist, and everything else should just be deleted. Like, it's pointless. Either balance them all together, or just don't balance them and start removing classes instead of adding more and more. There are a number of games that fall into this trap all the time, and they just, for some reason, it's like it always drives that sense that players are like, do the developers even play their own fucking game, essentially? So even like games like Final Fantasy XIV have a lot of strong balance between all the classes. They all have relevancy, they all have a purpose. Nobody like discards a class saying that it's completely worthless and we can't have you in your party kind of thing. So like those details are important, especially for things like PvP. It is even more important and should be weighted even harder at that point. Alright, so at PvP, there's just like these windows here, essentially just for grade scores. It can tell you the reward rankings, so you can see what you can get for like, you know, you get like auras, titles, basically a lot of nice aesthetics. So to me, this is very worth it. Like, I love chasing aesthetics. Whether if I have to like fail like 1,000 times or something, I'm still gonna go after them. So that's really nice. I actually like this a lot. This looks cool. There's team deathmatch. There's also deathmatch, elimination, competitive matches. Oh, maybe this might turn into an esports too, Jesus. But in any case though, moving on like to trade skills. Trade skills is pretty much like the life skilling of Lost Ark. It's very simple. It's the bonuses and activities in Lost Ark are straightforward and not mind-boggling, and it doesn't feel like you have to grind like 50,000 hits like a day kind of thing. Looks like you can drain like the energy pretty quickly, and it's a nice little bonus where you don't have to like get an extra set of gear or anything like that. You can just do it mid-combat in the midst of your journey, which is really nice. There's a few of them, I think, with logging. You can actually do it with friends and parties or whatever. Like, you can both hit the same tree and they'll die faster and you'll both get loot. So there is like some partying involved, maybe. I'm not sure if that was entirely correct when I read it, but I'm not entirely certain about it, and that's what it seems to be. So in terms of that, like as you progress further down the road, there's like mini games or like little extras that you can do, I believe, for some of these. It's got like chances, or either that it's got like a just input bar kind of thing where you can just stop the bar in the middle of a chop for bonus. Unless I got this wrong with a skill, I might be mixed up here. And you'll just yield more items. So naturally, as you progress higher and higher into the levels of this, you yield more and more, and it also helps drain your energy faster, as far as I'm concerned, is what it seems like, because your speed increases as well. So, which is great, because you don't want to spend more time gathering when you're progressed, which doesn't make any sense. As you're progressed, it speeds up, you drain more of the energy, and trying to find the energy rate regeneration for your account, essentially, there's no real timer saying anywhere. So I had a reference post from an officer of mine that told me that energy regen is about 0 to 10,000 in about a span of 48 hours. So you can just sort of divide that up, 10,000 divided by 48, and that's pretty much about how much energy you regenerate every hour. That's one way to go about it, and that's how much downtime, I guess, in between life skilling. You should probably gather these things as you go through your adventure anyways. It's kind of nice. I know some people may have concerns of inventory here, and this is where I think Lost Ark actually really like you know, told me that, hey, we're not going to give you inventory hell or mind-boggling pay-to-win incomplete inventory nonsense. They gave you its own like life material storage and whatnot that just goes into here and just lines up and starts counting upwards. This is really good because I was actually kind of afraid of inventory hell when I was doing this, and it looks like I have a shitload of items right now, but honestly I could dismantle about like 3 or 4 rows of items here right now and still have a lot of inventory to work with. And so far I haven't hoarded anything, or much not, and I haven't really even used my storage. So inventory management is actually like very breathable room for now. I don't know how it is later, that could change, but in terms of like this early game and mid game and just doing some of these things, I was actually concerned. I was like, hey, where did all these items go? And then I finally clicked through the tabs and found out that I have a storage here for these items, which is good. Like it's very incentivizing, where it's like, oh, maybe I should put some money in this game essentially and support it a bit, because games aren't charity. So I don't know why people keep thinking like beating a game with a free to play and never putting a cent in is a flex. That just means you're a leech. So so yeah, trade skills are pretty much there to increase your stronghold. Stronghold allows you to craft things. I'm not there right now, it'll show more of it at the end, but it is pretty much to craft things to set off ships, build items and stuff. Some of those things I believe can actually bleed over into your character power as well. I don't really know how it builds into it yet, because I'm far too newbie in this game, and this is only a shallow breadth of the first impression of Lost Ark. And I think this rate of 0 to 10,000 is okay, because I don't want to be playing this game 24/7 sweaty like all year round, trying to make sure that's pummeled to 0 every day, because that's just unhealthy. And so yeah, so like that's actually kind of nice that you can just sort of do it on the go as you're adventuring around. And combat skills, like I want to go over them here now. Like there's enough variation between the combat skills that you can for each class and its subclass. It's always interesting to just reset them around. You can reset them around freely. You don't have to like pay anything for this as far as I'm concerned, which is really good. You can just do it on the fly, out of combat essentially. When your skill reaches tier 3 at level 10, it usually has like a functionality change, so it's pretty like skill game changing. Some skills, like for instance like charge that I have here in my original skill tree at level 10 is max until you reach level 55. It changed it to a normal mode attack. So attacks in skills have like different modes about them. You see these ones that say normal. You see this one that says combo. Combo means you can trigger it like twice in a row kind of thing, like a combo. Charge means you gotta hold the key down to charge it, and if it reaches max, you let go to let it go. Other skills are called holding, which means you can just hold on to it, and it just proceeds to play the whole animation and damage out as the attack is going off. And if you let go, it stops essentially. Chain is basically like multi-trigger skill. You can trigger it once, and then there'll be like a short period before it goes on cooldown, and you can throw other skills in between, and then you can finish it off with like the second trigger right away. That's what chain is. And that's pretty much it for the attack types. So for charge, for instance, this one is usually you have to hold down the key and wait until it's full, let go. When I got the power stab, it changes it to a normal mode skill, so there's no longer a charge bar. It's just instantaneous as the animation plays out as fast as it does. There's still a little bit of a wind up, but there's no longer a charge bar where I have to stand there for like extra seconds. It just comes off immediately. So it's quite a big like functionality change in terms of skills like that. Other things could be like changing it into an explosion, or giving yourself a teleport in the tier 3, but even taking the level 4 points into a skill just so that you can get a tier 1 trait on your skill makes for very, very different gameplay effects. For instance, you might just go all power strength and whatnot, but even the lower skills that are just like tiny damages, if you take traits in them like this for excellent mobility, for instance, this plus 2 meters, it doesn't seem too much. I measured this on screen. It's about like one character width is 2 meters, and that seems really, really small. But to be honest, like fighting some of the mid bosses that I reached now and running hard mode where I actually got one-shotted a few times, this actually it could be the difference between life or death, considering most classes only have one escape technique inherent to their abilities. sometimes you might want to use your attacks as mobilities as well. And if you can aim it properly, you can do chip shot damage on your way out away from the boss, or on your way into the boss to reconnect with the boss essentially. So this functionality of just a little bit of extra distance could be like the difference between you standing in an AoE or getting out of an AoE right at the edge and not getting clipped. So it's actually really big, so you should also consider these kinds of things too towards builds. And that's why I believe, like, you know, there's a lot of build variation that you can have here, and the fact that the game offers up to 10 preset slots is kind of crazy. These are probably locked behind a cash shop, I'm assuming, but even then, like, the 2 or 3 here that you get is pretty good. And early on it shouldn't matter too much because you can mess around with your skills freely. And your awakening skills come later, and level 10 is not an awakening skill, it's just a functionality change skill. And I don't know what happens at 55 because I've never reached there. Okay, character profile. There's gear sets here, and there's also many stats that you may want to attune your gear towards a particular way. That, you know, when the game and the fights get more spicy and dicey down the road. So this to me is a very good tooltip system for the most part. There are a few little things that are nitpicks that aren't explained to me, which I don't understand, but I probably can discover it if I actually put some time and effort into it. But a lot of the stuff is straightforward, and the descriptions are actually very easy to understand. I'm not questioning what the fuck this means kind of thing, and usually when I have that reaction of like, what the fuck does this mean, it means like the game has no idea what the fuck it's talking about, or they have shitty ass tooltips or stupid ass translations. Lost Ark feels like it does not have this. I can mouse over most of these things and it tells me what it does. And I can also look at, you know, stat caps as well. So it's like minimum reduction up to 100%. Attack speed can only max increase up to 140%. So that means like I can only boost this by 40% and such. Like, these are all very important details to a game that has a lot of stats and lots of things going on. So this tells me that this is going to be very complex later on, or very unique to certain builds and certain classes that you could tune yourselves a certain way. So that means it gives a lot of freedom for a lot of people to build different ways. At least that's what it seems like. I don't know if that's the case when you actually arrive at that area of the game, but this is all very like positive signs to me. And most of the time when I come to some games, I don't understand their mechanics at all. Like, they say like, oh, 10% increase in crit rate. It's like 10% increase. They actually meant that your chance to crit is now 10%. It's not 10% increased off of what you had. So like, if you had 10% crit rate chance and an increase of 10% crit rate, that would only be 1%. Whereas in other games, that definition is completely fucking the other way around. It's like increase in critical chance by 10%, and it actually just means add another 10% on top of your 10%, which would be 20%. So there's a definition distinction there, but like for Lost Ark, it seems pretty straightforward here. Like 215 equals my crit rate is 10%, 10.5%. So like 1 out of 10 attacks will crit essentially based on this crit rating here. So like you can figure things out and make a good build for yourself just based on these things if you just sit around and put some thoughts into it. So this is really good. You're not doing guesswork. You're not questioning like what the fuck the mechanics are in this game. And yeah, even when I'm doing combat against bosses, when I die to them, I don't feel like it's the game's fault. It's myself for getting greedy and not paying attention, and then I die. And like, I'm just like, oh god, it's my fault. It's not the fucking game's fault with like a desync or like a lag or anything like that. It really reminded me of Vindictus, and a lot of people know me from Vindictus. Like, when I die in that game, it's the same feeling. It's not because the boss was like had some shitty mechanic or whatever. It's my fault because I didn't dodge and I just got fucking greedy, and then I took too many little chip shot hits and got myself owned. So it's stuff like that. So Lost Ark has that same feeling, and that's what is very appealing to me as well. Alright, so under the Bifrost, under the Adventure tab, we got this Bifrost menu here. I don't really know what it is. It's something with that key I saw earlier with the account level 50 or something like that. It looks pretty big. The sheet music here is pretty interesting feature to help you like exit dungeons, go home, or like sort of like unlock certain weird secret paths on the map if you have the song, or you could like play these songs to NPCs to raise your rapport with them. It's pretty interesting for the most part. It tells you how to get them, just not exactly. It gives you hints as to how to get them, and this stuff is pretty interesting. reminds me of like Legend of Zelda for some reason. I don't know if other people got the same feel, but yeah, there are certain things, and like some of them are gained through like an adventure tome. Exploration like this is always very important to me in an MMO, especially in your honeymoon phase. So doing like continent and the adventure tome stuff, you can unlock some of the songs here, like this one at the 50% objective. You obtain the song through the book, and yeah, those are just like objectives of things to do. And even more so, like in Lost Ark, it seems to be fairly continuous for exploration to some extent. There's even like finding collection things called these Mokoko seeds, completely hidden all over the map. They're barely visible. I thought it would be kind of easy, but even I had frustrations finding some of them. Some of them are even hidden off in like broken areas of the map that are not even on your mini-map, so it looks like an error because you're just running off the mini-map and into some weird dark secluded area that isn't even part of the terrain, and you're like, oh, is this a bug? But it's not actually, it's intended, and they hid some of these things very, very well in very hard to find spots. Even with a picture guide on some of the ones that I got frustrated with after spending 4 hours scouring a map, I still couldn't find it even though I knew where the location was, and it took like at least a whole minute just to figure out where the interactable point was, and I was like, holy shit. So if you want to do that kind of map scrubbing, yeah, this is available for you, but like, do remember it is quite difficult, so take a breath or don't lose your mind doing it if you actually want to do it without a guide or anything like that. There's also other collectibles as well. One is, I think, through gathering stuff, through trade skills, it says here. I don't really know much about any of these other ones, but it looks like there's a lot of exploration involved in Lost Ark. This is very, very good for the game's longevity, and also for people who are like myself, completionists, and also looking to see what everything an MMO has to offer. And the more activities like this is very, very welcome, essentially. And this is a lot to take in for just the beta, essentially. And yes, I know the game's been out for like 1 to 2 years or like 3 years in Korea, and even then, like, this is a pretty impressive like welcoming, essentially, even for a game that's been out for 2 to 3 years. I've seen other games that have been out for like 5 or 6 years or 7 years or 8 years, and they barely had much to offer at all. So here early on in your adventure, you'll get something called an adventure tome. This to me is a lot of meaningful grind because it basically a variety of different activities throughout the game. It'll tell you about hidden stories that you can look up and learn about NPCs or their interactions and stuff if you care about that. There's usually 2 hidden quests somewhere, or like a story quest somewhere that's related in that region. You've got targeted monsters that you can kill with a mark over its head, usually that little yellow symbol, and it'll mark it off and attribute to this percentage increase. It's really nice because 100%ing a tome here I think is really valuable. Not only do you get like cards and other things that can help you grow your character, it also sort of makes you check out areas of the place. You've got vistas here, which are just to viewing points in the environment to take in the environment. You've got like a world boss here that tells you what it's about, and world bosses usually, you won't be able to solo them. You're going to need at least like a band of people to come help you out and slay it together. You'll get your credit as long as you participated for a length amount of time. And you've got this insignia in the bottom left to show you how far you are into the main quest for this area. It's sort of like a nice little log journal of like where you are currently in the story for that character. Dungeons if you completed hard or normal mode, and as well like craftable items or items that you need to find or make with NPCs or monsters that you gotta grind. There's a bit of grinding involved to get some of these pieces. Like you've got common pieces, you've got uncommon pieces, you've got rare pieces that are really hard to find, like 2 out of 4. They're just RNG drops from monsters in the area. So like 100%ing a book I believe is like very, very valuable. You get like crazy stuff like this Rethmus statue, and it lowers crafting time and action consumption if you're gonna make a lot of these. Who knows, but even then, like, the structure looks like a nice addition to your house and whatnot at home. And there's lots of different rewards, especially for something like Udia content at the 50% rate here to get the Song of Temptation. So how this turned into a chain reaction was that I learned the Song of Temptation, and then a bit of a minor spoiler here, you meet Prince Thyrain, some Chad dude or whatever who's trying to reclaim the kingdom. Once you unlock the first main major city, Lutera, then you can actually raise rapport with him, and actually the Song of Temptation works on him, so you can raise rapport as well on him through the Song of Temptation. and gain even more amity points to quickly raise that level up, so you can get more rewards and boost your account level EXP, and possibly level up and gain permanent stats across all your characters. So that's like the whole line of a chain reaction effect of what could happen by doing these things. So it is very well worth it, and sort of like encourages you to go check out the areas. So it's really nice, and getting the 10 out of 10 tokens, which is the first 10 continents or whatever, is probably going to be an arduous task and a pretty long grind, I would believe. Another thing I want to go about here is like, there might be only 10 tomes here right now, or what is this, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Yeah, so there's only 10 tomes here right now, but like just based on the UI design here, I've noticed that there's 24 slots in total. So this to me either gives this to me sort of like speaks to the scope of the enormity of this game. If there's only 10 continents shown here right now, and there's still like another 14 continents to go, that means Lost Ark still has a lot of scope down the future. And this is just a way to deduce like the possibility of how big this game might get down the road. Otherwise, they wouldn't have designed a UI like this, because this doesn't make any sense to just do this and then have these slots unfilled. It's just kind of weird design. So like this is one way to deduce possibility of how many more segments there are to the game, and then like once it reaches the end, obviously usually the big question is like what happens next. But it looks like there's a long way to go before that question even needs to be asked, and so far the game has presented a lot of enticing features and activities in an MMORPG that I think is totally worth giving it a shot, regardless of if you think the game is bad or great. Alright, so just like a few more things here. Una's task, don't know what it is. Quest journal, this is pretty straightforward. Just one thing I want to mention is the guide section here. So you should always do the guide quest whenever there's one available here. It sort of is a tutorial quest. It's very short and quick. Usually pushes you into the activity right away and gets you right into it and how to do it in like as few steps as possible without completely being blind in information. So when they show up, you should do them. They're really good and gets you engaged in a new activity if you care about it. Then there's also the guides, which is pets. Pets seem to have like their own stats as well, which I assume could probably be kind of pay to win, but I don't really know much. But I was given this free bunny for free. There's pets on the store shop as well. We were given some in-game currency, in-game cash shop currency for the beta, just to test out the current shop and really look into it too much. Mounts are pretty straightforward. You ride them to move faster. They've got their own singular like speed boost skill that cools down in 5 to 10 seconds. If you have the cash shop one, it moves slightly faster, and that speed boost one is like slightly on a lower cooldown and goes slightly more distance. So it's just a slight convenience benefit. I don't think it's really too big of a deal. The codex, this thing is very, very useful. As long as you know how to utilize this thing can help you with your adventure quite a lot. So if you click on the All tab and you're looking for things like, for instance, in your adventure tome, and you're like, oh, where the hell do I find this thing, right? It might not be very descriptive, but you can still search it up here. Like for instance, like Levatinos core, and just click this when it shows up in the drop down, and then it tells you where in continent Udia. But you already know it's in continent Udia because this is the book here. So it's not entirely helpful. So you might just want to read the description of this item, and it may give you a hint of where it drops, or you were just paying attention and knew which monster dropped it when you got one, so you just keep killing it. The rare ones are usually much harder to find, and yeah, so that's the codex. Training room, you can get DPS meters and stuff and shown for your character. This is where you can like train and figure out your class or do more Sweatlord stuff if you want, but DPS on like a sitting target doesn't really mean much if you gotta dodge AoEs and other things, because if you're dead, you're not really doing DPS anymore. And yeah, so in terms of community, there's your marketplace. Stronghold members is just like people's housing and stuff. There's raid, find party, voice chat, which is probably for much higher sweaty like raids or whatever later on. There's a lot of emotes in the game. You can unlock some of them as well. It tells you where, purchasable at shop, quest completion rewards. So there's quite a lot of emoting here as well. I'm sure they'll add more, which is pretty cool. You've got pet tricks. You've got chat emoticons already given to your stuff, and you can just use them and cause it to pop up right above your head as well in the general chat. It's pretty cute. There's a lot of engagement stuff. So it's like they seem to have covered most bases, if not almost all of them. Guild has like a bunch of activities in it as well. You can do guild sieges, that is, I don't really know how yet. Got weekly tasks that you can choose and pick and do together as a guild. There's research or something as well. There's very lots of things here that I don't know about guild because there's not enough time to really engage in much of it in the short beta when I'm still trying to figure out all the class and other things that you presented to you as an initial player anyways. Then you've also got friends list, which I only have one, and that's pretty much it. Alright, so I'm just gonna go back to the Stronghold here, and yeah, and we'll just like wrap this up because I know this video has been pretty long, and thanks so much for being all the way here through it.
You're back. I was waiting for you. There are matters that need your approval. You can go check them in the office.
So as I said before, your Stronghold takes on a whole different dynamic where you can just sort of like place stuff and like sort of decorate it. You can even put your alts here as well, as you can see. One of my infighter is right there, just positioned, chilling out like a statue, I guess. And yeah, it's like you unlock this stuff, you research, you can do like crafting here. You gotta like complete what is it? Research and crafting stuff. What was I crafting? I wasn't crafting anything. So you can finish this. And there's also tracking rebels, which is a mission result details for currency. I can set them off for more. I want to make sure this adaptation rate is for higher end rewards. My Stronghold seems to have leveled up and I don't even know how. There's a lot of things going on here that I haven't really fully put time into figuring out. You can build ships as well and set them off for timers. You've got like a trade merchant here on my island. He's over here. He'll be disappearing in 3 hours for someone else to show up. You can have your friends over. It's really nice. It's this chill period essentially from your like slaughtering days out in the field. And yeah, so there's also ships and sailings and other things later on in the world. It shows on the mark somewhere. I think it's around level 38. You unlock your own personal ship and you start going on water voyages. And yeah, I never really got up there, but that's as much as this first impression video goes. Overall, I think Lost Ark is a pretty good game. It hits a lot of the marks I expect in an MMO for a long time for once, and I think the game is on a good track to becoming one of the best. The audio background music isn't anything to come home to write about or be memorable, but the sound design of the skills and attack combat is very, very impactful and very, very rememberable. So bosses and story plot and battles have been completely non-linear for the most part from the get-go. It's a great sign to the future of the game when it presented in different environments so frequently early on in the game. It just means endgame will probably be even better. And usually my concept is if the journey sucks to endgame and you're trying to get rid of it as fast as possible, then chances are endgame is just as awful, if not even more. But if the beginning and the mid-game is great, and then that means like endgame is probably going to be even better. Questing in this game is fairly mundane. It's your traditional MMO of go here, do that, go here, kill that, return to NPC, turn in your rewards. But the thing is, it advances the story plot as well, like I said, in short digestible format one-liners, which is really easily like understood for what's going on in the plot. And the objectives to those quests aren't insane either. They don't have you killing like thousands and thousands of monsters like over and over for like hours at a time, completely boring your mind to death essentially. Or like for example, there was one quest where it had me gather 80 sets of grain, and I thought it was like, oh my god, like I'm gonna do this like fucking thing 80 times. But it turns out it wasn't 80 times. I only had to do it like 4 times because the first one that I hit was, it gathered like 27 items that was required out of 80, and then the second gather made it go up to 51. By the third gather it was like 70, and then the final gather it completed off to 80 out of 80, and then the quest was done. It only took like a minute. And I was like so relieved. I'm like, oh my god, they actually didn't do stupid ass quests that made me do something moronic for like over and over and over out of 80 times. So the environments and the questing, the questing may have been mundane in terms of objectives, but the amount of time they have you invested into it is very, very short, which is really nice to just jump into the game and jump out of it in case you're a busy person. And for those who want to gush through it and just speed through and be a sweat lord to the max, you can also blast through it really fast. So it fits both crowds and it works out really well. On top of that, the environments changed so often that I didn't even really feel like the questing was mundane. It's because I'm running through so many different areas that I got to see constant different change of view and environments that like it did not feel mundane. And the plot line itself had enough cutscenes and things going on to keep me interested enough where I wasn't bored, and I was actually paying attention to the plot as well, where I started paying attention into more of the side quests, and overall, like put together, this is a very good sign for like a game's health essentially. So essentially Lost Ark removed a lot of annoyances of old MMOs and made things better. It gave details, gave cutscenes that I don't believe are that bad, to be honest. Some of them are kind of corny, and yeah, they could be better. I've definitely seen better in single player games, but you know, I've obviously experienced far better in other games, but they're like single player games. But for an MMORPG experience and what it's offering on the table for a free to play game in March 2022, it gives a lot that a lot of MMOs that I've paid for in the past before, you know, a lot more than what they gave for what I paid for. So like this is why I'm very in support of Lost Ark and what it's giving off here. All right, so we got cash shop here, free royal crystals, and then there's also like the actual cash shop currency, which is those blue crystals. So we've got some skins here. We've got like the noble banquet skin, and yeah, it's got like different set slots, I'm sure. Let me just buy this since we got like free currency from the game or whatever. Or oh, I can get the Petranian Knight skin, so let me just do this and see what happens. Sure, claim this. Claim. See what's up. Alright, so we'll open this up. Okay, we've got like 3 types of swords. Let's just go with purple. And then looks like the Chaos Knight. So it's 3 pieces here. So yeah, the costume is set up in 3 different slots, and it can go in the skin presets here. So it looks like there's slots for chest, pants, head, and head 2. Oh, it looks like lower face and upper face. And then you've got goggles at the very top here. And you've got your instruments and weapon. So it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slots of customization, which is great already. More than I can say with some games that only have 2 or 3. And you know, this game isn't like mega LOD either, which is level of detail, but you know, it portrays what it needs to be.